For months, South African exporters faced a threat that loomed like a storm on the horizon: steep U.S. tariffs that threatened to drain profits, destabilize industries, and upend livelihoods. From the lush vineyards of the Western Cape to steel mills in Gauteng, businesses were forced to recalculate their futures. Every day brought uncertainty. Would another shipment to the U.S. be rejected or taxed at prohibitive rates? The financial tension was palpable, with companies teetering on the edge between survival and collapse. The tariffs, imposed by the U.S. administration under claims of national security and trade imbalance, targeted key sectors that formed the backbone of South Africa's exports. Steel and aluminum shipments faced sudden, substantial duties. Wine producers, proud ambassadors of South Africa's rich vinicultural heritage, saw their carefully cultivated brands suddenly become far more expensive for American consumers. Fruit and agricultural exporters confronted similar hurdles. The economic impact was immediate. Contracts were renegotiated, orders postponed, and many companies began exploring alternative markets that were often less profitable or more competitive. Financial strain rapidly spread throughout the economy. Exporters wrestled with cash flow issues as tariffs sapped margins and threatened jobs. Some smaller wineries and farms considered layoffs to survive, while larger manufacturers scrambled to absorb costs or risk losing U.S. clients entirely. Beyond the immediate financial hit, there were broader ripple effects. Local suppliers faced reduced demand, currency fluctuations threatened to inflate costs further, and investors grew increasingly wary. The stakes could not have been higher, and the question on everyone's mind was whether any relief could be found in this legal and economic maze. Amid this backdrop, legal challenges began to take shape. U.S. courts were asked to examine whether the president had overstepped his authority under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, to impose tariffs. Lower courts, in cases like VOS Selections versus Trump, questioned whether national security concerns could justify such sweeping trade measures. Companies followed every development with bated breath, aware that a favorable legal ruling could mean the difference between survival and ruin. These court battles were complex, involving intricate interpretations of U.S. trade law, procedural hurdles, and appeals that could stretch for months, or even years. The financial pressure intensified as months wore on. Businesses were forced to innovate just to stay afloat. Wine producers experimented with alternative export strategies, steel and aluminum manufacturers sought new international partners, and agricultural exporters recalculated shipment costs daily. Every missed or reduced order amplified uncertainty, and some companies quietly feared bankruptcy if the tariffs persisted. In boardrooms and offices across South Africa, executives held tense meetings, discussing worst-case scenarios and weighing whether they could endure another month of financial strain. Yet even as the courts deliberated, hope lingered. Legal experts pointed out that the IEEPA had never been intended to authorize such extensive tariffs, particularly on allied nations like South Africa. Analysts predicted that a favorable ruling could restore balance to trade and provide a financial lifeline to beleaguered exporters. Still, the outcome remained uncertain, and every day without clarity further escalated the tension. Small businesses, in particular, watched nervously as they risked losing not just profit margins, but employees and years of investment. Then, at long last, relief arrived. The U.S. Supreme Court struck down the tariffs, declaring them unlawful under the limits of presidential authority. For South African companies, the news was transformative. Those that had already paid the tariffs stood to receive refunds, providing an immediate boost to cash flow. Exporters could once again price their goods competitively in the U.S., restoring market access and alleviating the fear of lost contracts. The ruling was not merely a financial reprieve, it was an existential lifeline, saving businesses from the brink of collapse. The emotional impact was palpable. Executives breathed sighs of relief. Employees who had feared layoffs could now breathe easier, and investors regained confidence in the stability of South Africa's trade-dependent sectors. Beyond immediate financial relief, the ruling offered a broader precedent, reinforcing the principle that sweeping tariffs cannot be imposed arbitrarily. For companies that had weathered months of uncertainty, it was both vindication and a clear signal that the rule of law could protect international trade relationships. The Supreme Court decision also had wider economic implications. Restored access to U.S. markets promised to stabilize revenue streams, support jobs, and strengthen the rand. It underscored the interconnectedness of global trade. Decisions made in Washington could ripple across continents, affecting not just corporations, but local economies and everyday citizens. For South Africa, the ruling was a stark reminder that vigilance, legal recourse, and persistence could transform crisis into opportunity. In conclusion, the battle against the tariffs illustrates the precarious balance that global businesses must navigate. South African exporters, having endured months of uncertainty and financial strain, now find themselves on firmer ground. The U.S. court's intervention has not only rescued them from immediate financial peril but also reinforced the principle that lawful trade practices matter, even at the highest levels of government. As South African businesses regain their footing, the ruling offers a renewed sense of optimism. Trade channels are open again, investor confidence is restored, and the country's exporters can once more compete on the global stage with their hard-earned products. In this dramatic arc, what once seemed like an economic nightmare has transformed into a story of survival, resilience, and hard-won triumph.